All right, welcome back. If you have been on this channel long enough, you will know that in the previous past or recent past, we had a set of lessons that were running with my apprentice Nathan, and in that thing we were trying to introduce even the very basic person to the concept of the physics of repairs, and we had introduced a couple of things that we thought was the beginning. So we had mentioned a circuit. In other words, that any device that you deal with is basically a simple circuit, and that when you're dealing with circuits, there are things you will need to know, and that means we mentioned voltage, and this is basically the energy source, because when you look at most of your appliances, they are just simply converting one energy form to another energy form that you need at the moment. For instance, if you wanted to heat water, basically you use electrical energy and convert it into heat energy, and by that you need to pass that current through a resistance wire. Now that brought us to the second thing, which was resistance, and we said that any circuit that you have is basically a giant resistor, because a resistor has resistance anyway, and that dissipates work or energy. Now, having talked about resistance, I thought it fit that we should also look at wires. Basically that's like 0 ohm resistors. So that meant we actually looked at the concept of wires. That introduced you to the idea of what a wire is. And having talked about wires led us to talking about or for us to having been able to talk about wires, it introduced the concept of conductors, and then as such insulators. So we dealt with insulators and conductors. I think we dealt with those exhaustively. Now the next stage after that, I thought today, or hopefully today, I'll introduce you to the concept of diodes. These are sort of a version of resistors, sort of a modified or fancy resistor, and as such I think that's the hope of today's video. But some of the honorable mentions is that under circuits we decided to mention the concept of symbols, and this will unfold along as we go. So as we introduce you to these concepts, those will lead us to components, and those components, there's a way we tend to represent them on circuits. For instance, we showed that the symbol of voltage is the letter V, and in diagrams this voltage can either be supplied by a battery, which is usually 2 parallel dash, one short, one long. This line simply represents a wire, and as such that would be the positive terminal, and that the negative terminal. So having said that, the next thing is to tell you that the resistance, we had the symbol being, okay, the common abbreviation for it is usually R, but the symbol being either a tiny rectangle with ends like that, or a zigzag like that. That was a resistor being represented by that, but a wire is simply just a line, as you would think of. Now, talking about diodes have sort of a triangle, and triangle with a line at the end that shows the diode. The diode itself also has variations, and we will hope to be able to cover that. But anyway, if you're new here, please do hit the subscribe button. And I wanted to just let you know that on this channel we shall be covering things such as first, the normal repairs. We bring a device and decide to split it apart and go through the process of repair. And then, having done the repairs, we shall review that repair. In other words, this is the second category of the videos that you'll find here. And the reviews are simply to highlight the concepts of physics that you might have learned and that we have covered in the previous repair. And then, of course, we'll introduce you to the theory. Now, that theory is to ideally introduce you to the concepts in physics that you interacting with on a daily basis to help you paint a picture of what's going on. I do not want you to simply be a person that will pick this component, swap it for the other, and solve the problem, but fail to understand the background working of those components. So this will, I'm going to sort of deviate a little. This will bring us to one. We're going to, having learned the physics, you'll understand electricals. These ones simply are just elements modified to work well, and they are very basic components of electricity, probably a resistor combined with a wire to create for you a hot plate system, you know. And then from this thing we shall head to electronics. Electronics, now these are components that sort of play around with the current or power given to it, and the output is not similar to the input, like it sort of modifies it. And notable mentions when it comes to electricals, I think I should say we might have under electricals, just a moment, I want to get some screen real estate, so bear with me if I do that. So now electricals, here we shall have your hot plate, some of those things you used to cook, or you call it heating coil. You can have your bulbs. These ones are just to give you light, and then you can have an extension, yeah, some things of the sort. Now when it comes to electronics, here you're looking at a radio, because now that one is complex electrical components. We shall have the televisions, and then you can look at phones. Of course, under phones, basically this should generally constitute computers, laptops, and all of the sort, and far much more. Here you could also go into domestic wiring. So that's the hope that this channel will be of help to you. Anyway, so I believe, let me just mention something on diodes before we go any far. So I do not know what you guys understand when we mention the term diodes. Diodes, just like that. I don't know. I think let's just take a moment for you to think of the word diode, or where you might have heard it from. Okay, now that you've thought about it, one is a diode is just I don't know, the way you would see. Okay, it's basically a device. This device accepts current to flow in a certain direction, but not another. More like the way you'd see water. If water flows downwards, it can't go backwards, so it has some sort of seal that prevents backward movement of water. More like the way you'd see blood vessels. So assuming this was a pipe, right? Now current, you remember we talked of it as I, and so it's something we covered, and then current comes out of that side. Yeah, this would make this a wire. However, if there was some sort of enclosure right here, that when you, let me call it like that, like a valve, when you pour water and push it in this direction, it will pass through this valve, but without allowing it to return backwards. So that is basically what a diode is. You want power to flow in a certain direction, but not the opposite direction. And some of the traits of a diode is that, one, it has a low resistance in a forward direction. Basically, if we look at a diode is, one, low resistance. I'll just represent that R in the forward direction. In other words, if it is going this way, the resistance is low. However, if we try to go that way, the resistance is actually high. This is in the reverse direction. Yeah, so that is basically the characteristics of a diode. Now, I don't know, but I'm quite certain that in high school you guys were introduced a little, if you've been through high school, to what a diode is used for. Yeah, you do. I know you might want to refute, but you do. So anyway, you find that diodes have applications in rectification. I don't know. Rectification is like correcting the direction, but this is basically where you have AC and you want to convert it to DC. Yeah, this is an alternating current into direct current. Direct current means it is directional. It moves in a given direction. It doesn't keep fluctuating to and fro, whereas AC has the attribute of oscillating to and fro. But I don't know whether introducing this at this point is confusing, but I think I will give you an idea later on in the future. That's why we had introduced you guys to voltages. Voltage is like source of energy, and with source of energy, you remember that we mentioned potential difference, and potential difference, that is the ability to do work, like the energy gap between 2 points that one can flow from one direction to another. So for alternating current, we have the tendency of that energy to keep fluctuating, and maybe when we start getting into more complex theory, we shall cover that, because at that point it's like we are tending towards design. But for the purpose of repair, we are mostly interested in the attributes of a circuit that help you detect the faulty components and be able to swap them out. So repair is giant swaps or giant rectification, but a big proportion is giant swaps, mostly when it comes to electronics, because if a capacitor dies, nothing much can be done but change it. If a diode dies, nothing much can be done but change it. Whereas for electricals, they are sort of like correctable. If a wire's contact to another is broken, you will be able to sort that by simply re-establishing the connection. So that's what you should be expecting here, and hopefully in the next video I'll go into these diodes further and sort of shed more light into it, because I know at times we repair and wonder what we've repaired. I personally began looking at motherboards and re-establishing connections, broken wires and all that, but there are things or items I kept on seeing on the motherboard of these devices and kept on wondering, what does this component do? What is it? Like, some of them really have intriguing looks, and I'm sure a good number of you have heard the word ice and you've thought it is ICE, like that cold frozen water from your refrigerator, but it's actually I.C. For a long time I kept on looking for white components on the motherboard, thinking that's IC, or components that felt rather very cold. No, simply integrated circuit, where a complex circuit is reduced into one component, integrated into one component. Yeah, so that's it for now. And if you're new to this channel, please do hit the subscribe button, and feel free to give me some feedback in the comments section. I'm also hoping we are able to one day build this into a community, a profitable, beneficial community. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. Let me just thank you for being here, and see you in the subsequent videos. Ciao.